Founded in 1682 by William Penn, Europeans first settled in Pennsylvania in 1637, although several tribes of indigenous people occupied the land for centuries before this. Pivotal in the French and Indian Wars, the 7 Years' War, the American Revolution, and the United States Civil War, it is no surprise that with such a rich history, our state developed a culture that is distinctive and multifaceted, full of legends and real-life heroes who risked everything for their beliefs. Today, Pennsylvania retains strong elements of folk culture developed by a combination of ideologies practiced by the varied ethnicities of original settlers, Native Americans, and shared experiences. Legends and lore passed down over centuries reveal philosophies that are as superstitious as they are religious, and even scientific, resulting in a microculture found nowhere else. Hi, you are listening to Pennsylvania Life, Legends, and Lore, where we believe that behind every great story, there is a nugget of truth. In each episode, your hosts, Ethan and Holly, will attempt to uncover that truth and preserve a part of our incredible Pennsylvanian lifestyle.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Pennsylvania Life, Legends, and Lore. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Holly.
And on this episode, we'll be discussing the elusive eastern mountain lion and the mysteries that surround that animal.
When the first Europeans arrived in America, the mountain lion was the most widely distributed animal in the Western Hemisphere. But by the late 1800s, mountain lions were wiped out of almost the entire eastern United States due to hunting, trapping, deforestation, and the decimation of their main prey, which was the white-tailed deer. Mountain lions are one of the largest wildcat species in North America, which no doubt you've heard of them, but most likely haven't seen many, if any, of these elusive creatures. They can grow to weigh more than 200 pounds, run up to 50 miles per hour, jump more than 40 feet, and even climb trees. Their current location ranges from northern Canada all the way down to South American Andes. Although a small population exists in the southern tip of Florida, they primarily inhabit the western half of the United States. Many rumors exist of mountain lions still living in some eastern states such as Pennsylvania, assertion that has been debated for decades. So, with a diverse diet and the ability to live anywhere from rainforests to deserts to snowy peaks, the mountain lions existed in almost every ecosystem in North and South America prior to the arrival and westward spread of settlers. Mountain lions are common symbols in indigenous American culture. While some view these apex predators as symbols of bad omens, many see them as sacred and revered animals. Persecuted by people who desired their pelts as trophies and seen as a threat to livestock, eastern cougars were rounded up and hunted, some with bounties, beginning in the 1800s. Hunting parties were formed during this time with the sole purpose of cornering and killing mountain lions. Competitions were regularly held, with variety going to the hunter that slaughtered the highest number and the largest of these animals.
That's interesting. I wonder what went through these people's brain or their minds when they were hunting them, or what drove them, why they chose the mountain lion. We have other animals that are, terrifying.
Predators.
Yeah, other predator animals that are terrifying. Like, hey.
That would, cause a threat to their livestock as well.
Right. So it's fascinating to me that, I don't want to say they chose, because, there was other animals that were wiped out from the eastern states, like buffalo. We used to have a ton of buffalo where we live. It's called Buffalo Valley. There's a reason for that. It just fascinates me why they chose these animals over other ones. Was there a reason why they did?
And maybe it's because they're such a larger cat that they viewed it as such a threat that they just didn't know enough about it, that they thought that, better take care of them now instead of losing their means of, food from their livestock and things like that.
Right, and they're pretty stealthy animal. As I grew up learning about them, they're a stealthy animal. I wonder if now obviously, Indians were here long before we settled into the United States. So I'm sure they were used to it, but I wonder how maybe the mountain lion adapted, or how they reacted when all of these people just started expanding westward, and maybe they changed and became more aggressive than they are now, that they were more of a threat to people then than
True.
they can be now.
True. Well, if they were being hunted in such large numbers, they might have seen us as a threat then too. So there might have been more of, a battle of who's going to win, us or them. So it was just, they took them out.
Yeah, and that's a tough one for me, because I mean, I'm a very avid hunter. Grew up with it, love to do it. It provides for our family, but that's kind of where it stops for me. It provides for our family. That's why I hunt. That's why I like to hunt. I don't hunt just to go out and kill something. So for me, I struggle a little bit with.
Although, I'm going to pause you there, because I have heard you say, if there's a coyote that's coming into, our backyard, that causes a threat to our family, our pets, so that's not necessarily hunting for a mean.
This is true. You're putting me on the spot.
Well,
yeah, that's true. It would be, yeah. I guess I can now.
See, you're not much different.
Maybe not. But I do.
Well, there were larger populations then, like we have of the coyote now, which does cause some problems to
Correct.
our deer population.
And maybe I would feel differently, probably would feel differently if that was the case of what the settlers experienced with mountain lions as what we're experiencing now with coyotes, then maybe I would understand a little more.
But maybe not take it to the extreme.
Not to the extreme, no. And I don't think I mean, to take it to the extreme when I think of a coyote. I think of it more as, I'm not going to go out of my way to go after them, but if one comes in and tries to go after,
right. If you see one as a threat,
child or one of our dogs, then I'm going to view it a little differently.
Correct. So I think that's the biggest difference, is protecting your land is one thing, but just going out for no purpose other than, trying to be the hunter with the most or largest kill, that's a big difference, especially when, they weren't using it as like a main food source, or, using their pelts as, I'm sure they did end up using them, but that's not what their main goal was for killing them.
Correct.
Then those that survived the massacre were left with little prey once the deer herds, were decimated by the settlers. Simultaneously robbed of habitat due to the growth of the lumber industry and settlement expansion, mountain lions eventually disappeared entirely from the east. Between human assault and dwindling food sources, the eastern cougar became an early casualty of the American expansion, living only in legend. So the last wild cougar that was killed in Pennsylvania was shot in Berks County in 1874. Penn State University's mascot, the Nittany Lion, is a reference to the big cats that once roamed Nittany Mountain, which looms over State College. The origin of the name Nittany is derived from the Native American words loosely pronounced nit-a-ni, a reference to the single mountain that provided a protective barrier from the elements for the indigenous people of the region. Penn State University houses the only known mounted eastern cougar in existence, which was killed in 1856. So I know we have all of our Penn State lovers out here, so we needed to definitely throw in some history on Penn State and how it incorporates into this animal.
Yeah, Penn State is our blood here, and if it's not, you probably aren't from central Pennsylvania.
Very true. Mountain lions hold a Guinness World Record for having more names than any other animal in the world. It has over 40 in the English language alone. Mountain lions, pumas, and cougars all refer to the same animal. Some of the most common mountain lion alternative names are puma, cougar, panther, catamount, painter, mountain screamer, Mexican lion, red lion, ghost cat, and American lion. The range of the eastern puma has been mapped as far north as Nova Scotia. So while mountain lions rarely weigh over 200 pounds, one record-holding cat weighed in at 276 pounds. So it's definitely not something that you would want to run into while you're out hunting.
No, and I've always
like what's an average deer weigh?
Oh man, now you're putting me on the spot. I don't know.
Well, I figured that would be something that you would know.
I don't know. I don't ever pay attention to how much they weigh. Heavy?
Well, clearly 200 pounds is probably more than that. More than what you're...
Yeah, they're probably... Someone will fact check me on this, but deer are probably, like... I don't know.
Do they weigh 100 pounds?
Well, yeah. They probably weigh, I don't know, maybe 175 to 250. That's just a guess. I don't know.
Okay, so they're about the same then.
Just to interject, Meg, the researcher here, a giant panda, that's about the size of a giant panda.
So I feel like a deer
Okay.
has to be smaller than that.
Okay, I take that back. Then it's probably like, they probably range between 100 and 200 pounds. That's probably more realistic.
They're sleeker though. So I guess when you're out in the woods, if you see a deer and a cat that weigh about the same, it'd still be more intimidating to see a cat that big.
The thing that is kind of hard for me to wrap my head around with mountain lions' weight is they don't look like they would weigh so much. They're big, but I would always think that they're
They'd be more of like the weight of a large
dog. Like,
yeah.
That's what I think is that they're dog size, but
right. Could you imagine seeing a 276-pound cat like?
I mean, they're just so muscular that.
True. A lot of it would probably be muscle.
Weight comes from.
So the male and the female mountain lions look similar, but the males just tend to obviously be a little bit larger. Mountain lions have the largest hind legs of all the members of the cat family, making them very good jumpers. They're able to leap from the ground 18 feet up into a tree, but they're able to jump spans of about 40 feet. They can reach speeds of 50 miles per hour, although they're not able to maintain this top speed for very long periods, but they can sustain speeds up to about 10 miles an hour for longer distances. So unless you're a good runner, I would not suggest taking off. Although the chances of you seeing one are very slim, but if you do, I wouldn't suggest running. Adult cougar paw prints are about 4 to 5 inches across for the males, and about 3.5 inches for females. And on the paw of the cougar is a notable M shape at the bottom with a divot on top, which is unique to that specific animal. So if you happen to see, a print and it has that M shape and it doesn't have any of the claws, because they do have the retractable claws, that's most likely the animal that made that print. The front and back paws have the 4 teardrop shaped toes, with one of the leading toes that is going to be slightly higher than the other. So if you ever see prints, those are some key things to look for to see if it could possibly be a cougar or a mountain lion.
Which is pretty interesting, because I know we're going to get into this a little later, but their paw prints differ from the bobcat substantially. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting to me, because bobcat paw prints are small. They're basically house cat size paw prints, and this you're talking a human-sized hand paw print, which is
which I feel like a cat paw print is more distinct. Like, you can tell a cat paw print more so than probably any other type of print out there anyway. So if it's huge, it'd be hard to mistake that for something else, especially a bobcat.
Right. I mean, even mistaking it for a smaller bear would be difficult, because bear have very distinct.
And they're more likely to have their claw
marks, correct,
in the print, whereas the mountain lion most likely would not.
Correct. It just that kind of was an interesting fact to me, that their paws are just so large.
Despite being the 4th largest cat in the world, behind the tiger, lion, and jaguar, mountain lions were not officially classified as big cats by National Geographic and the World Wildlife Federation until 2018. And why, you may ask? That would be because mountain lions don't roar. They don't possess the same larynx or the hyoid apparatus as other big cat species that gives them this ability. But it doesn't mean that they don't communicate in plenty of other ways. They speak in a variety of sounds, such as chirping, growling, shrieking, and even purring. The mountain lion's best known for their distinctive and eerie screaming, which is also known as caterwauling. Now, I don't know if you looked into this at all, Ethan, when we were doing research, but I know that the sound that they made, I just needed to know what it sounded like. So we are going to play you a little clip, so that way you get to hear why they call it this eerie screaming sound. So here we go. Now, I don't know about any of you, but if I were out in the woods, that is not a sound that I would want to be hearing. But if you were to hear a noise similar to that, that would be, that's their distinct screaming sound. So it's definitely not a roar, like you typically hear of the lion. You have that monstrous roar. This is very creepy.
I always kind of wondered if for all the Penn State people out there, the Nittany Mountain roar that they kind of play, you'll hear it a lot on TV when they do like a replay or something like that, or they'll play at the stadium. I always wondered if that was accurate, and it's not far off. I'm sure who knows, somebody who maybe will know if that's an actual mountain lion for Penn State roaring or making sounds, let us know, but I would be terrified if I heard that in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say terrified. I would have a sense of urgency to go back to my truck or cabin.
Say hunting isn't as high up on your priority if you start hearing that noise.
Probably, depending on the time of day, and if it's at night, I think I'd make my way back to the truck.
So while it is a large animal, the mountain lion is actually the largest small cat, which it's generally more closely related to a domestic cat than the lion or tiger, which if you do see it, it does look more like the shape of a house cat versus the shape of a lion or a tiger. The lion and tigers, their heads are huge, and the mountain lion and any sort of house cat does have that smaller...
More proportional to their shoulder width is what I always view it as. Like, they're very sleek when they're coming at you. Like, they're...
Mm-hmm. So cougars do not retreat to a home base, cave, or den for sleeping. They are continually on the move around their territory, and they find suitable shelter spot to sleep in when they want to. And on average, in adult male mountain lions, they have a home range covering 50 to 150 square miles. And I think that depends kind of on probably the age of the mountain lion, maybe the health of the mountain lion, depending on, how wide their territory is going to be. Females have a slightly smaller range of about 50 square miles. And while female cougars have less of a problem with their ranges overlapping with other females, the males don't typically want another male within their range. So if you have that 50 to 150 mile area, more likely than not, you'll just have one male, maybe with a few female.
Right. Well, this kind of answered this was kind of my biggest question to the whole reason of this podcast was, or the reason of this episode was,
I come back to this fact a lot.
Yeah. I truly want to believe that mountain lion exist in Pennsylvania still, and I always struggled with, but why aren't we seeing them frequently? And I mean, this information kind of explains that. Even hunting season, like Pennsylvania, I think still holds kind of the record. Like we're the third. If you took all the hunters the first day of hunting season,
Yeah, I think it's
we're
like
the
is it
third,
like a million? We have a million hunters.
roughly, and I think it equates to like, in army standpoint, the world's third largest army. The first week of rifle season in Pennsylvania. So I always thought, well, why aren't
if they were here?
If there's a million people spread out across the state of Pennsylvania hunting,
Right.
why aren't we
Seeing them
on maybe not a yearly basis, but every 10 to 20 years? Why isn't somebody saying, "Oh, hey,
right?
I saw a mountain lion"? And especially now with technology and everybody goes to the woods with their cell phone or
Right.
trail camera. I always thought, they got to be popping up more and more with the way technology, but you don't see them. But this kind of answers that they have such a wide territory, and Pennsylvania woods are so vast. I mean, there's huge areas of woods where,
Right.
And
they are also a nocturnal animal. I know most of the hunters, especially in that first week there of rifle, they are going out in early morning hours, which is also their prime time, right before sunset there, or sunrise, that they're, the most active. So it could also be they have such a wide territory, and, when we're out in the woods, it's not necessarily their prime time to be out and about.
Right. And, I mean, yeah, they hide just as easy as, I mean, anybody who's listening who has house cats probably knows they can disappear for a long period of time, and you can go looking for them and you'll never find them, and it's like, where did this cat go? And then they just show up.
And that's in a just
right. That's in a home.
Right.
You're talking the whole state of Pennsylvania with
woods.
Yeah.
And an animal that can easily jump up into a tree.
Right. And which is interesting because it makes me wonder, I'm sure the chance of me ever having a mountain lion around are probably slim, but maybe not. But I wonder how many times maybe I've gotten close to a tree that maybe a mountain lion was in and I wasn't paying attention, and maybe I would have seen one off in the distance and just wasn't looking in the
especially
right place.
I feel like in our fall foliage, like with the color of the brown tan that the mountain lion typically is, if it's up in a tree, which in the fall has similar colors, it probably blends in pretty well, up there as well.
Right, which is kind of a creepy thought because, I mean, again, I go back to hunting. We go into the woods in dark and come out in the dark with a flashlight, and I can tell you most times that I go in, I always hear something running around
probably
or something
almost rather
snapping.
not know
and
what's
it's like,
watching
oh,
you.
what's that? And sometimes I've picked up that it's a deer running like that. When you've done it long enough, you notice that stuff. But there have definitely been times that I have went in and have heard things that it's like, I do not know what that is, and I cannot get into my tree stand fast enough.
So often, the young female cougars, they're going to choose a territory next to the one in which they were born. But the young males may travel very far to be able to establish their own area because, again, the females, theirs are going to overlap a little bit, but the males, they want their own space. Mountain lions can roam as far as 10 to 20 miles a day. The verified sightings of mountain lions in the Midwest are usually young males. And the habitat in any area might be very good for mountain lions, but if there are no females around, they're going to keep on moving. So, their extinction. In 2011, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services opened an extensive review into the status of the eastern cougar. In 2015, the agency determined the eastern cougar no longer warranted protection under the Endangered Species Act and planned to delist it. On January 22nd of 2018, the delisting became final, and the eastern cougar was officially declared extinct. According to the Center for Biological Diversity, the eastern cougar was extinct well before it was protected under the Endangered Species Act. But now, that categorization is in question because people are starting to see them. So we'll get into a couple of the sightings here in a little bit, you know, because people are saying that they're either back in this area or that they never left this area.
Right, and there have been, and this is kind of where I don't want to say struggle with it. I get a little annoyed, I guess, because it's like people are providing photos of, hey, we hit one, hey, I shot one in hunting season, and I think some of them have been discredited as, well, that photo wasn't in the state of Pennsylvania, it was in this state, but some of them have not been discredited as Pennsylvania.
Or they're saying they were like photoshopped.
Correct.
Something.
And I think that's where I struggle is they still surface from time to time. I'm sure I've seen one in this time frame that they're saying they're extinct. That someone has said that they've hit them. I mean, I feel like they pop up every maybe two years or so that someone says they hit one or shot one, or some found one and have some photos of them. I think that's where I kind of struggle. It's like, are they really gone, or is it just there's not enough and we don't have any valid evidence that they're here, so they're extinct, but they may really still.
And I feel like calling a species extinct, like that just, it comes with such weight to it. Like that's just, I feel like they shouldn't be taking it lightly, which I would hope that they wouldn't, you know, but it also comes with, when they're protected under this Endangered Species Act, I'm sure that it comes with a large cost, you know, to protect them.
Sure.
So it might be more of, we're just going to say that they're extinct now, even though we're getting evidence that they may or may not be, but we're just going to keep them on this list as being extinct.
I wonder if it's maybe, I don't want to say migration, I guess, of some of the mountain lions that are in the West are migrating east, because maybe their population's going up and they want more territory, or do we have some that are still around in the East and are just really good at hiding and staying out of.
Well, and if the population obviously did dwindle when they were so heavily hunted,
sure,
you know, so it's possible that the population just has remained so small, you know, between that and how large their territories are, you know, that they could have never left.
It also, something else that I just thought of is, I kind of wonder, you know, everybody evolves as time goes on. So I wonder if this predator animal, maybe when the settlers came and started hunting them, maybe they evolved over time, that they're not the great predator that they used to be, and they're a little more on they're still a predator, but they're a lot more cautious. They don't expose themselves as much unless they have to, and maybe that's why we're not seeing as many, and they're now extinct.
They're elusive.
They're extinct, according to the Game Commission.
So some of the, we'll go through a couple of our sightings. Pennsylvania's last known pair of mountain lions were killed near Lock Haven in Clinton County in 1871. The last single wild cougar in 1874 in Berks County. A mountain lion was killed by a hunter in Potter County in 1967, but the State Game Commission ruled that that animal was an escaped pet. And we will get into that in a little bit as well, that is a lot of when one is spotted in the area, it's thought to have been an escaped pet or from sort of zoo or containment. There we go. Although the commission insists there is no evidence of wild mountain lions anywhere in the state, sightings continue to occur on a regular basis. Wherever there is an alleged sighting of a mountain lion in Pennsylvania, most people suspect the person has likely seen a bobcat, house cat, a deer, a dog. You know, they're so quick to say that's not what you saw. But it's difficult to discredit the numerous credible outdoorsmen who have spent countless hours, you know, outside hunting and insist on the existence of the Nittany lion. In eastern North America, which is not just, Pennsylvania, especially in the rural regions, various residents have reported as many as 10,000 cougar sightings since 1960. And many continue to believe that the subspecies has survived in this area, so not that it didn't even leave at all, that it shouldn't have been considered extinct, that it's still here and it's been here.
And that kind of goes back to my kind of new thinking of, did they just evolve over...
They adapted their way of life to avoid us.
Right. Did we do such harm to them back when the settlers came over and started hunting them heavily, and when we just didn't really care about them and we just eliminated them? Did they adapt and evolve to people, to think, hey, people are bad, we don't want to get close to them, they're a threat to us, and stay away?
Clearly, obviously there was more of them back then, but clearly they weren't as difficult to spot either, because so many of them were killed and they were coming after their, livestock. So clearly they had changed their ways in that aspect, because they are staying, out of our sight now, whereas back then it seems like they were more willing to come out to the point where we could see them.
Right.
So that's a good point.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, I think about it is, I think a lot of people think that they are, they're a predator to humans as well, but they really aren't. I mean, you don't hear, and I try to keep up with the news, that. You don't hear of people being attacked by them in the West, or people being killed by them like you do with, grizzly bears. And that's not, those happen a couple times a year that somebody gets attacked by a grizzly bear, but you just don't hear out in the West that someone was attacked by a mountain lion, and they have them.
Right. We know they're there.
So it just makes me wonder if they are really, I don't want to say fearful, but cautious when they know humans are around in their territory.
Right.
I mean, animals have good senses like that they can pick up on stuff.
If they can travel 10 to 20 miles a day, and say one of them has like a 75-mile radius, they probably know that territory rather well. So if they're in a spot where, certain humans come on a regular basis, I'm sure they know about it. So if they wanted to make themselves known, they would, but they don't. Right.
Yeah, it's just some interesting things that I think about that make me believe that, they're... Personally, I don't believe they're extinct. I don't know the number of mountain lions that we have around, but I just don't...
You think they're still here?
I truly think that they're still here.
And honestly, before doing the podcast, I could have went either way, whether they were here or not, but doing more research and figuring out, and again, I go back to how big their territory is and how rural of an area we are, and the eastern states are, the likelihood of you spotting one probably is slim.
Yeah, and some of the stories you're going to get to just have kind of solidified that, for me, that, they're totally here.
So we'll get into one sighting. This one was back from 2005. An avid outdoorsman and hunter with about 37 years of experience. His name is Pat. He knew the wildlife, he knew the woods, but back in 2005 in October, he saw a mountain lion walk past him when he was turkey hunting near his central Pennsylvania home. So he lived in Clearfield County, and he was set up with his back up against the tree about 6:45 in the morning. And again, this is going to be more of their prime time, nighttime coming into morning where they're going to be a little more active. The mountain lion gave two soft yelps, and about 2 minutes later, the large cat came walking past him. In one of his interviews, he stated that he watched the animal through his rifle scope, and the lion eyed him over as he observed it, and a few seconds later, the mountain lion moved on. So it really didn't take any sort of notice to him, or he probably noticed him but didn't give any bother, so clearly he didn't see him as a threat because he held still. He wasn't, really doing much to try and provoke the animal, which was probably in his favor. And I think one of the main things that sticks out to me is what Pat had said next. So he said it was a good-sized cat, noting the animal passed within 12 yards of him. So he clearly he noticed the distance. He knew how big the animal should be, or how big it was from being that distance from him. And he said there's no comparison between a bobcat and a mountain lion. The head, the ears, and the face, and there's nothing like it. So that really makes me question why so many people are so convinced that when there is a sighting of a mountain lion, they think that it could be mistaken as a bobcat. There are such differences between the animals, and clearly he states that, and I think that's why this sighting sticks out to me so much, because he says, he knows the difference between the two. Like, this isn't a mistaken identity of a cat.
Right, and this is what this one bothers me a little bit, that people go to that, if someone says they see a mountain lion, they're like, oh, it's probably a bobcat. It makes me believe that maybe those people don't even know the difference, because, 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, of going on the internet and looking up what a mountain lion looks like and what a bobcat looks like and comparing them, it's so different. In one, what they look like, and two, they are on different planets in size. A bobcat is basically what I like to call a glorified, slightly larger house cat. And a mountain lion is...
Although it looks like a house cat.
Yeah.
It looks more like a house cat, I think, than a bobcat, but the size is clearly different.
I could see that if somebody said, oh, I saw a bobcat today, and someone said, or, that, oh no, it's probably a house cat. I could see that argument. But
you would believe that one more so than
someone saying, oh, you saw a bobcat, not a mountain lion. That makes me truly believe that person hasn't looked or really studied the differences between the two. I know
from like a distance, you could think that an animal is much larger than what it actually is. But, his account, he was 12 yards from it. That's not enough distance in my mind to mistaken a small animal for a large animal.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's close enough that he would have, the knowledge to know that this is a big cat.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're talking looking at that'd be like putting a house cat by a large dog and, at 12 yards and saying, oh, they're the same thing. You mistook that large dog for that house cat.
So that was 2005. This next one is going to be in 2018. There was a large amount of mountain lion sightings that occurred in northern New York of Pennsylvania. The one incident occurred in mid-July where 2 pet horses sustained injuries, which a Dr. Foster, who was from the York Daily Record, believes they're congruent with mountain lion attacks. The horses had 2 sets of claw marks on their hindquarters and a bite near their, you might have to correct me, is it withers?
Yes.
Withers? Okay. If there are horse lovers out there, I apologize if that's not correct, but I believe that is. So then Dr. Foster stated that the markings are not consistent with coyotes or bears, and a bobcat would be too small to make the claw mark that's that large. And according to Foster, the only animal that this injury is consistent with is a mountain lion. So unfortunate for the horses that they had to take this sort of rough battle, but they were able to see, the claw marks and things like that to best identify what animal was making these, did these attacks. So that was in mid-July. Then on July 17th of 2018, Stacy Griffiths posted an update on their Facebook page of Mountain Lions of Pennsylvania Info Library. And in that, she stated that the Eastern Puma Network confirmed that the horses were indeed attacked by a mountain lion. A representative from the Eastern Puma Association inspected the wounds on the horses as well as the surrounding areas, and they found evidence that the horses, as a team, were able to drive off the mountain lion with as much force as they could at that point. Because a lot of people were saying, well, if a mountain lion attacked horses, those horses aren't going to make it through that attack. But I believe because it was two of them, they're saying they were able to, get this animal away from them. It also could be, too, if, the mountain lion if it is approaching, livestock now, like these horses, there could be something, it could be injured, there could be something wrong with it, that it was approaching, more so civilization than what they typically do. So that could be another reason why the two horses were able to drive it off. The cat also had made markings on a nearby tree, which was on the direct path that it took from the state game lands to the farm where the horses were. Several days after the horses were attacked, a mountain lion was identified by two other individuals at another horse farm. So it seems like that mountain lion was staying within that area. Again, they're not typically obviously seen. So I know that was one of my initial thoughts, is that, well, maybe it was injured and didn't have any other means of getting a food source. So it was being driven towards these farms to try and get, quote unquote, an easy prey.
Right.
A horse in a fence can't do much, but since there are multiple horses, they're able to defend themselves a little easier than if there was just one.
And as you were reading that article, a couple things kind of clicked with me here that is interesting to me. So up from what you said earlier, the the Fish and Wildlife in January of 2018 determined mountain lions were extinct in the state of Pennsylvania.
Right.
State of Pennsylvania. And this happened in mid-July of 2018, the same year.
Right.
Was confirmed by a doctor that they were mountain lions.
Right.
But
just 7 months after
they still remain extinct. And that seems like maybe they jumped the gun on it a little too much. Maybe they should do a little more research on it. It's a little angering to me that not more was done with this specific case, other than we confirmed it was mountain lions. And I think from Meg's research, our researcher, I think she had tried to reach out to Miss Griffith, and Miss Griffith had really tried to push us to the Game Commission that, like, these were mountain lions. They are here. We have solid proof of it. And I believe she said her response was that they said it was somebody's house cat.
Actually, my last communication with Stacey, she said they are still seeing mountain lions. There are still regular sightings of mountain lions in their area in York County, and the Game Commission at this point is ignoring their sightings and their appeals. And Dr. Foster actually taught biology and I think veterinary science as well at Messiah College. So he's really, really well versed and knows what he's talking about when it comes to, he's multiple degrees in those fields. So
this was kind of this was the big story for me personally. It just
makes you wonder why the Game Commission isn't acknowledging, these sightings that are coming from so many different people in such, coming from the same area. Clearly people are seeing them. Why is there such a pushback to say, well, they're not here?
Right.
What steps are they doing to determine, well, that's not what you saw? Are they doing any sort of other research to find out whether or not people are seeing them, or if they're just
right.
kind of blowing it off and saying, well, no, that's not what you saw. They're not here.
Right. It would just, for me, I would like to hear from the Game Commission of just a statement of, hey, we're going to need more evidence. Maybe you're correct. Right. We need more solid evidence.
What are they
Provide
looking
us more.
for? Right.
Or, hey, it's due to funding.
Mm-hmm.
We can't afford to do that right now. You might be onto something.
Mm-hmm.
We'd love to say that they're, not extinct. Just something. Give us some clarification, or tell us why you're telling us what is the Game Commission's reason for saying, hey, it's a house cat?
Mm-hmm.
How are they coming to the conclusion that, it's probably just somebody's pet?
Right.
And yeah, that's this story. Like I said, this was the big one for me.
It'd just be interesting to see what their thoughts are. Whether they think, well, yeah, maybe they could be here, but again, we don't have the resources to figure that out. Or whether or not they're actually going through the steps of telling people, you're seeing a bobcat, you're seeing something else, they're not here. It'd be interesting to know what their stance is on it.
Right, and in the same time, and maybe we need to look. I don't know if there's an article from Dr. Foster on this attack or not, but I would also like to hear how he came to those conclusions. Did somebody see the attack happen? I know they said they thought that the horses kind of
they had
together.
They
had the markings of it, yeah. But it would just, I'd like to kind of hear his side from it too, not to just go right against the Game Commission. But I know they're also saying they're seeing, they're seeing these mountain lions, so that makes sense that one would have attacked the horses, not discrediting what the doctor said. He's a doctor, I'm not.
From the article, and also what Meg again here, what I discussed with Stacy, the reason it was confirmed that it had to have been a mountain lion was the paw print wasn't the right type of paw print to be a bear. Like, you think about what kind of animal can take a horse down.
Right.
The paw print didn't have it didn't have the right markings for a bear.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There were claw marks in the horse. It was way too large for a bobcat, and actually one of the horses was a very large plow horse, which is why they think the horses were able to fend off the mountain lion together, because the one horse is basically a beast. It's not just a riding horse.
Right. Right.
And they said with that horse, there was no way a bobcat would have been able to leap and get into the horse that way.
Mm-hmm. And their paws are so much smaller.
Yeah.
So even just seeing that distinction between the paw markings or the claw markings, you can clearly see whether they're this, like a smaller size versus, would we say, 3 to 5 inches. That's a big difference in a paw size.
Yeah, and the attack was not consistent with anything you would see from coyotes either. It was clearly one animal. Coyotes typically hunt in packs. And for a horse, it would have been expected that more than one set of marks and stuff would have been found on the horse, because probably more than one coyote would have been involved. Also, paw print, again, way too small.
Right.
Way too small. So that's
where...
Well,
coyotes aren't all that
huge.
big either. No. So, for one coyote to go after two, especially a large horse, seems very unlikely.
Yeah, so that's where the conclusion came from, how it was developed, that marking is really just consistent with the paw print of a mountain lion. They also, I believe in the article, he said he compared it
to the paw prints of Western mountain lions. Because although there's arguments about the subspecies, whether there really is a difference between the two or whether there are subtle differences, the paw print is the same. So that's how they arrived at the conclusion.
Yeah, it just, again, this story was the one that kind of bugged me the most, I guess, because
you have professionals confirming.
Right, you have the animal being extinct 7 months later, pretty solid proof that, hey, it's not extinct, and it's probably not somebody's house cat.
Somebody's
or
pet.
Sorry, yeah. Their mountain lion pet. Which I get people have. I don't know why, but you do. Look it up on YouTube. There are people that have mountain lions as pets. No thanks. I don't like when our house cats nibble on my fingers when we're petting them. I can't imagine a mountain lion just like nibbling on your, I don't know, whole arm.
Well, and I think that they can get away with saying that so often because, you know, there are certain rules and regulations and, you know, things that you need to follow in order to legally own one.
Right.
You know, so if you don't legally own it, you know, I think there's like a black market even for big cats, you know, so if you don't have it legally and it gets out, chances are you're not going to go, hey, have you seen my mountain lion that escaped? You know, so I think that's why they so often are like, well, it's somebody's pet that they lost or let loose because they didn't want it anymore, because the chances of somebody reporting it missing are probably slim, because they may not own it legally.
Right, and the other thing that I kind of hang up on with the house pet is if the mountain lion that is living at your home with your family is domesticated enough to not attack you in your sleep. I'm not saying it wouldn't go after other animals, but I feel like it wouldn't necessarily go after a horse if it's not going after the human that it is potentially sleeping in the same room with.
Well, and I also don't think that it would probably survive very long. Depending on how long it was domesticated, it may not know how to act in the wild.
Right.
You know, so they may not survive very long, especially if you have a male that you are living in the territory of another male. If it gets out, you know, I don't know what happens when two males in the same territory come across each other, but if one of them has been a wild cat its entire life versus one that has been domesticated the majority of its life, I'm sure one of them is going to prevail, and it's not going to be the domesticated cat. So the chances are it may not survive long.
Right.
So the last sighting that we are going to cover is one of the most recent. It was in May of 2022, where Rick was traveling through Middleburg, Pennsylvania. He struck a large cat with his vehicle. It was dusk, which again, we kind of determined that is more of their prime time. And he was traveling with a friend who also witnessed the large brown-colored cat with a long tail dash into the woods. So they drove a short distance after they had hit the cat. So they drove down the road, they stopped, they turned back to investigate. There was no blood, there was no hair, there was no sign of the animal. However, the animal that he struck was large enough to cause $4,000 worth of damage to his vehicle and walk away. So one of the main reasons why we wanted to discuss this sighting is because one of the main things that they're saying, you know, as to why they're not here is because they aren't getting hit by vehicles. You know, everything else in the area, you know, we have them, we see them. Unfortunately, they do get hit by vehicles, and we see them on the side of the road. You know, we do have some of the larger animals, though, that can withstand being hit by, you know, our vehicles and walk away. You know, and I think you being more into the cars than I am, our vehicles have also evolved to the point where if you hit something, it's more able to take that impact. Kind of just crush a little bit, and then the animal can walk away.
You'll have a higher bill for repairs now than you probably would back in the day because.
But the chances might be more likely that it'll walk away.
I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah, I can see, like, the car is going to take more. A newer car is going to take more damage than a older car would, just because they are built to crush when they get hit to keep the driver safe. Right. So I do see what you're saying. Yes, by hitting that, because the car is built to kind of collapse
absorb
under that I could understand that it would maybe be a little more possible for an animal to live versus being hit by a car from the 70s, 80s.
Mm-hmm. And I know from my own personal experience, I've hit a bear with a vehicle, and it wasn't even a big bear, but it ran away, and there was minimal damage to the vehicle because I was able to mostly avoid it, but the bigger the animal, the easier it's going to be able to take a big impact like a car hitting it and walk away. So to me, just saying they're not here because they're not getting hit by vehicles doesn't hold as much weight as, some of the other reasons that people are concluding as to why they're not here.
Right. And again, I know a lot of people say, well, we hit deer all the time. Why aren't we hitting mountain lion occasionally? Well, I read an interesting article just recently, and some of the reason we hit deer is because their food source moves, or they exhaust a food source and they have to travel further and further to find these food sources, and it just so happens that beside highways are good food sources, so they're eating beside highways, and that's why they're getting hit. The other reason is, if you look, we have a lot of deer hits during the rut, which is, to non-hunters out there, their breeding season, basically, when the deer just go nuts and they chase each other, and they pretty much give up all the cares in the world during rut and are more into chasing each other around and mating. So, and we see increased accidents then. So I understand what they're saying, but again, you're talking about something that just doesn't put itself out there to the world.
Right.
So I can see where we would hit, someone would hit one with a car occasionally, but not to the extent that, we shouldn't be getting one hit every year if they exist.
Well, and like we said before, their prime time is more, they're nocturnal. They're going to be out more at night, where there are less vehicles on the road. Not, people are on the road obviously at night, but there are less. So, you have less people on the road and, less animals in a wide range of miles, so less vehicles, less cars, less hits, so I don't particularly like that reasoning, but I get it.
Yeah.
So some of the theories we've already touched base a little bit on, as to why people are saying they're either not in this area or they're not here. And the number one is that they are escaped pets, which I know we've touched base on a lot. They
again, the escape pets for me, I see that. First of all, I find it hard to believe that there would be a large number of people that have them as pets. I can see there being a couple people that would have them, and again, you would think that they would show themselves more in towns or the outskirts of towns where they would be a more common sighting if they were a domesticated house mountain lion.
Well, and you'd think they can't just keep them inside. So I feel like neighbors would know if you had one. Like, so then if it was gone, you know, and then there were people seeing it, somebody would be like, hey,
Right.
that's so-and-so's from down the street, you know? Like, so even that, I mean, I get people have them legally or illegally, like we had said before, but I don't think it's as many as what they're just claiming.
Right.
All of the sightings are someone's pet.
Right.
So another one of the theories is that they are the bobcats, the deer, coyotes, which again, we've touched base on that as well. But my biggest thing with those is, especially if you're within a certain distance, you know, the sizing and the shape of those different animals, it's very different.
Right. And this is going to sound a little harsh, but just do your research. Go look at a bobcat. Go look at a mountain lion.
Mm-hmm. And again, I know if it was a distance, if you were fields away and you were seeing a cat, like I could see having an issue determining the size of it, although you probably wouldn't see one that's a lot smaller. But I could see maybe having a mistaken identity when it's far away. But when you're seeing it up close, like, there's nothing like the look of a mountain lion in this area.
I think you're wrong on the distance. I mean, even at far distances.
Okay, I can't tell the size.
But if you know anything about them, mountain lion are on the move. They don't stop. The deer argument, briefly, I was just thinking, you know what, I could see someone saying a deer was a mountain lion, but then I thought, no, that's not it. No, because when you see a deer, the only time to me a deer is going to look like a mountain lion is when it has its head down eating and someone only sees the top of the back of the deer or the body of the deer. They don't see the legs, they don't see the head. But you're never going to see a mountain lion, I feel like, just standing still in a field.
Probably not during the day, at least.
During the day or even at night with its head down eating out of the field. I don't buy it unless it has something.
But looking at it, aren't deer legs are more
they're skinny,
slender and long.
Correct.
Whereas a mountain lion legs, they're going to be
saying.
Shorter and stockier.
And that's what I'm saying. The only part that I can see maybe mistaken with the deer is you can't see the deer's legs or head or tail. You just see the body of the deer, and someone's like, "Oh, that's a mountain lion."
Well, and I'm sure their coloring has to be along similar lines.
A little bit, but I think deer are darker brown, and mountain lion have a little more of like a grayish coloring.
Well, I don't even know bobcats. What are their typical colors?
Are
they more grays
like gray.
And blacks and
coyotes
coyotes similar like that, or might have more browns in them too? Maybe
coyotes are. The last coyote I saw was a little bit of gray. It had a little bit of like a white creamy coat to it. They do have a little bit of brown, but it's more on.
I think theirs are more. They have more coloration to them, whereas the mountain lion is more of that tan, brown throughout. Right. It's not like differing colors.
Well, there's also the other thing too is the mountain lion has shorter, kind of smoother, sleeker hair, where coyotes are more hairy. Bobcats are hairier, or fluffier, whatever you want to call it. Where mountain lions are a little more like deer. They have shorter hair. They're a little sleeker. They're just a shorter haired animal.
And I think the tail is significant to mention too. Like deer obviously don't have tail like a bobcat or like a mountain lion. A bobcat doesn't have a tail that's long and thin like a mountain lion does. And coyotes, I think, are more along the line of a dog tail, where it might be poofier and not as slender as a cougar. So I think that would be another thing. If you can catch anything on the animal, I think a tail would be a significant determination for myself to be like, okay, that's not this, this, and this. That's something that's significantly different on all of those animals.
Right. if someone is seeing and saying that they saw a mountain lion, I think for the most part those people are correct unless they're making up the story, because you're going to have to see enough of the animal to determine it's a mountain lion. If you just see the body of an animal, you can't just immediately say, oh, that's a mountain lion, because there are, like, a deer. Potentially, if you saw the body of a deer, you could say, oh, that's a mountain lion, but it was really a deer. Or it could be vice versa, where you could say, oh, it was a deer, and it was really a mountain lion. But, so, I think you have to, if you've seen the whole animal, it's hard to make that mistake, I think. I think it is one of the harder animals that you can just say, I saw a mountain lion, and someone can just come back and say, no, you didn't.
It was this.
Spend 5 minutes on the internet looking up these animals, and you'll immediately be like, okay, like that would be hard to mistake in the woods or in public.
Yeah. So a third theory is that they never actually left, which we touched base a little bit. Some believe that they've been here all along, which I think that you pointing out the time frame between the period of them actually being delisted from, the endangered list to the attack on those horses, that short amount of time we had a confirmed sighting, so it's possible that they've been here all along. In Pennsylvania alone, there's been 1,500 confirmed mountain lion sightings since the 1950s. So why we think that they went away, I get that their population dwindled because of us, our hunting, our, developing of land, like taking away their habitat, even though there's still plenty out there in the rural areas of Pennsylvania, but I don't necessarily think that they were ever gone at all.
Right. Yeah, and that's where I'm on the fence. I kind of think I think they exist. Like I personally believe they're here. We just don't see them. I think what I don't know that I can come to a conclusion myself, I think that they potentially could have been here all along. They've never left. But I also think we maybe wiped them out, or enough of them that they couldn't, reproduce and make any kind of number. And then eventually they did go extinct. And the western mountain lion has expanded its territory and has migrated this way back into the eastern states. But I do believe, regardless of if it's an eastern or a western mountain lion, there are mountain lion here.
And what I come back to is we have had so many sightings over so many decades of them. So why would we think that they were never here? I get that we did so much damage to this animal that we are the reason that it became or was believed to become extinct in this area. But with so many people seeing them throughout not only Pennsylvania but throughout the eastern states, I tend to push more towards that they've always been here and they've just adapted to life with us to the point where they don't want to interact with us and just figured out how to live with us without interacting with us. All right, so the last theory that we're going to touch on is the possible colonization of the east cougars by the western cougars. So the theory of, there is no real distinction between the two, but the fact that the western cougars have made their way over to the eastern states. Some cougars found far in the east were established to be of western origin, and the most famous of that is the Connecticut mountain lion. So this male lion had trekked 1,500 miles from South Dakota, which was the furthest distance that we currently have record of, before it was eventually hit by a vehicle in Connecticut. So it's not typically the norm, but I believe it is going to become more common that, these western mountain lions are making their way over, towards the eastern states. And like we said previously, there may not be as much of a difference between the eastern and western mountain lions as was previously believed, that they were two different subspecies. But the way that they kind of identify that they are the western is obviously when this one was hit by the vehicle, they could tell by, the contents of its stomach, what it had been eating. I believe some of like the pollen that is on its fur, are obviously different by regions. So they could tell that it wasn't originally from the eastern states, that it had, migrated from South Dakota to our area. So that's another one of the theories that is out there, that, they might not be the eastern cougars, but they're migrating here from the west.
Right, and especially in more recent time, COVID happened, so it's possible that they may move farther now, because everybody was staying home for how long, and you see it with other animals and with other habitats, things that people were doing constantly, like the animals were affected by it now that people weren't out and about as much, and so maybe even more so recently, these mountain lions are, if they are coming from western states back east, it's possible recently that they have really been making those treks across the United States, because there for large chunk of time,
a good year and a half to 2 years.
Yeah, people weren't doing anything more than they had to, so the humans weren't interfering in their everyday lives like they had been prior to 2020. So it's possible they're moving more than they were before.
Well, and the western mountain lions, their population out there is still relatively robust. They're a healthy population. So they may be coming our way, where we have our dense forests, we have our deer population. So it's not all that far-fetched to think that they wouldn't be coming this direction.
Right. Yeah, I think that is very possible, and honestly very likely that they are, if we didn't have a population here for a short time, we definitely have some from western states now migrating this way.
Or they could be coming from more northern areas like Canada. They can be making their way down our way as well. That's another possibility of where they could be coming from if it's believed that they, had disappeared from our area entirely and weren't still here the whole time.
Right.
While there is no argument that mountain lions are still very much alive, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service claims that the eastern cougar has been extinct for some 70 years. Still, questions remain. Have mountain lions been migrating from the west to the east? Has the average bobcat just grown so large that people are confused about what they're seeing? Or did this ghost cat somehow manage to survive in the most remote areas because of its natural instincts and stealthy behavior? The habitat in which the mountain lions can live is vast, and by nature they easily adapt to even the harshest conditions. Over the centuries, since settlers first arrived in North America, industry has grown, cities have expanded, and land has been developed. However, even today, North America and the United States is blessed with vast areas of remote, unadulterated wild wilderness, state and national park land, and nature preserves. One question that continues to be raised is, how do we know that the eastern cougar is extinct? How is this determined? Also, within the last 20 years, there have been 14 species found in the wild that were previously classified as extinct. how do we really know that the eastern mountain lion won't be a similar case? Perhaps the primary argument against the continued existence of eastern mountain lion is the lack of hard evidence. No clear photos, no definitive paw prints or droppings, and no roadkill. But this isn't exactly the truth. We have already discussed the many cases where mountain lions were sighted, paw prints were found, and photos were captured. It has always been decided that these animals must have escaped captivity and aren't part of a small but growing wild population. While researching this topic, we reached out to Stacy Griffiths, who helped investigate the 2018 horse attack. She affirms that mountain lion sightings still occur regularly in her area, but the Game Commission has effectively ignored all the evidence that they have brought forward. Also, we are talking about an animal that at its core is elusive, with territories of 50 to 150 square miles that rarely overlap. Unless starving, they will not wander into populated areas. Solitary creatures, mountain lions pass through their territory silently and naturally avoid spaces where they sense people. With wild areas in Pennsylvania, such as Queehana, which is 48,000 acres, and Hammersley, which is 30,000 acres, there are plenty of secluded spots where a mountain lion could roam completely undetected. These wild regions are largely expanses of relatively undisturbed forests that are set aside to protect wildlife and have plenty of deer that could feed large cats. Because of how remote these regions are, people would not be likely to cross paths with a lion hunting within. Mountain lions usually do not make themselves visible unless they want to be seen. It might be years before any solid answers are provided, which means the folklore and debates about mountain lion sightings in Pennsylvania will most certainly rage on. The Mountain Lions of Pennsylvania Info Library was created to focus on organizing the reports of mountain lions in Pennsylvania. They have compiled a Google map of unconfirmed public reports, videos, pictures, and historical information regarding this topic. This will also be posted on our blog, so if anybody wants to log on, check out that map and see if maybe they're within any of these areas. That way you can keep your eye out for them yourselves. And we also we want to hear from our listeners. So if anyone has their own sightings or stories to share with us, you can send us an email at info@shawleyagency.com. And also, if you have a Pennsylvania legend you would like us to cover, let us know also at that email address, and we'll be sure to look into it. And then we might actually talk about it on an upcoming podcast. So thanks again for listening to Ethan and I today. We really appreciate everyone who, tunes in and gives us a listen. And we will be here again next time as we cover the ghost of white deer pike.
Yes, and we'll improve our podcasts as we do more and more of these. This is the first one, and we look forward to continuing this.
And we hope you stick with us.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and come back and listen to the next episode, and we look forward to talking about the ghost of white deer pike.